Alright, happy Halloween, you spooky fuckers. Sprinkle here, coming at you with a Support Fiddlesticks guide. Fiddlesticks is one of my favourite champions in League. In this video, we'll be going over everything you need to know to bring the most fear to the enemy bot lane. Alright, let's jump into it right after a short message from today's sponsor, Oh wait, we don't fucking have any. When are we picking Fiddlesticks? Well, ideally in draft phase, I always tend to like to first pick, especially on blue side, or at least first or second pick on red side. In my opinion, champ select should go in the order as followed. First support, second AD, third jungle, fourth mid and fifth top. It's mainly just getting the fourth and fifth to the mid and top lanes. This enables your solo liners to have the most chance to counterpick their enemies if they desire. Also, in the case of first picking Fiddlesticks, it lets enemies assume that Fiddle will be jungling. If enemy junglers assume this, they will most likely pick early game invade junglers, allowing our jungler to match or counter enemy early game picks. Moving on to some champion synergies, Fiddlesticks works extremely well with champions who have near-sighted abilities such as Graves and Nocturne. This will allow you to fear target without yourself being in a bush or T-posing. Fiddlesticks also works well with champions such as Jarvan and Aurelion Sol, as they can trap enemies inside your Crow Storm. Fiddlesticks will not combo well with champions with large knockbacks. Okay, let's run down Fiddlesticks' abilities and his passive. His Q, Terrify. Fiddle point and clicks launches a crow at an enemy, fearing it for 1.25 seconds. This scales up to 2.25 seconds based on ability level. Because of this, scaling CC will be maxing Q first. Enemy champions who are affected by fears cannot be feared again for a short duration. This duration is shown by a circle indicator below their target. Casting Q on targets who already have this indicator below them will not fear them, but will deal double damage. Q deals the most damage based on target's current health, with a minimum and maximum damage thresholds. This maximum damage is capped at 400 damage versus monsters. Once Q has been leveled up, all of Fiddlesticks' abilities can fear enemies if number 1, Fiddlesticks is unseen, or number 2, Fiddlesticks is posing as an effigy. We'll talk a bit more on effigies very soon. Onto his W, Bountiful Harvest, the mighty suck. We'll be maxing this second. Fiddle forms a tether between itself and nearby enemies in a circle around him, granting true vision while their enemies are tethered. Whilst enemies are tethered, it deals magic damage over time and heals Fiddle based upon the damage dealt. When Bountiful Harvest completes its full channel, it will refund 60% of the current cooldown and also pops the final tick with burst damage. Moving on to his E, Reap. Fiddle slashes with his scythe in a target area, dealing magic damage and slows all enemies hit for 1.25 seconds. Enemies within the center of this ability are silenced for the same duration. We'll be maxing this ability last. Onto Fiddle's ulti, Crow Storm. Fiddle channels this spell for 1.5 seconds and blinks to a target location, dealing huge magic damage for 5 seconds. Crow Storm can be cast over many of the Rift's larger walls, much longer than this spell indicator shows. This is one of the highest DPS ultimates in the game, and will also fear any target hit as long as Fiddle's either T-posing or unseen at the moment of cast. Finally, Fiddlesticks' passive, a harmless scarecrow. Fiddlesticks' trinket slot is permanently occupied with this ability. Using the trinket slot will place a clone/effigy of Fiddlesticks to stand at a location, acting as his wards. After level 6, these effigies will also apply the sweeper effect around the clone's location for 6 seconds. If an enemy comes too close to the effigy, it will fate cast an ability, flash, or run in the targeted direction. Fiddle itself can stand idle for 2 seconds to pose as an effigy. This removes your health bar and enables you to utilize the fears as previously discussed. Posing as an effigy, or T-posing, can be interrupted by moving, taking damage, or being CC'd. Effigies will not be affected by spells or damage for the first 1.5 seconds of its lifespan, so if you're looking to block an ability with an effigy, you'll have to predict it 1.5 seconds in advance. Now let's discuss how fleeing mechanic works. So anytime you fear a target, the affected unit will run in the opposite direction from the source of the fear, meaning you can direct enemy champions to walk where you want them to, as long as you move alongside them, shown in this clip where I force Ari to walk into tower range. Okay, with all that explained, let's discuss Fiddlesticks' runes and items. We'll start off with the runes. To enable Fiddlesticks to roam pre-level 6, I like to take Predator. This helps to chase and run down enemies into a lane just to throw a Q at them. This is an escapable gank for most immobile champions. I like to take Sudden Impact for more magic pen whilst casting Crowstorm, taking Zombie Ward for bonus vision after denying enemy wards, and Ingenious Hunter for the item ability haste, which also includes the trinket slot, so that means more effigies. And for secondaries, I run Perfect Timing for the free stopwatch, and Cosmic Insight for lower summoner spell cooldowns and more item ability haste. Moving on to the core items that I'll be building on Fiddlesticks. These are mainly Zonya's Hourglass and Crown of the Shattered Queen. Both of these items will have much lower cooldown from the rune page previously discussed. Depending on whether or not you've already used your free stopwatch will determine which item you'll be rushing first. So if you've already used the stopwatch, complete the Zonias first. It is super important you get that status effect. But if you've managed to hold on to your free stopwatch, you can rush the Crown. This gives Fiddlesticks the very much needed survivability when ulting into a center of a team fight. You'll be taking a lot of fucking damage, and negating as much of this damage as possible will help you survive in late game team fights. Obviously, being a support, we'll be having to pick up the Spell Thieves as our support item. You can also pick up an early Dark Seal if you're performing well to scale with a bit more AP, as long as you can maintain those stacks. You'll be able to buy a Magi's too. Usually on my first back, I like to pick up level 1 boots and Dark Seal, and then later Russian Sork shoes for the magic penetration. Magic pen is extremely valuable on Fiddlesticks, as his base damages are already so high. Later on into the game, you can buy the support ward stone. It gives you nice stats, but also enables you to keep your pink ward slot free. Your last item slot is very flexible and entirely up to you. You can either build Morellonomicon for the anti-heal if your team needs it, Shadow Flame for extra magic pen and versus high HP shield champs, or you could just go straight Rabadons for the max amount of AP damage as possible. Alright, so now we're all geared up, ready to head into Summoner's Rift. Let's talk a bit about how the game plan's gonna go down. Now, with the early game, Support Fiddlesticks is pretty challenging, he's very weak early, and will struggle versus enemies who know to abuse his weak early game. We'll be starting with E level 1, so you'll be able to apply some pressure and poke, whilst also stacking your Spell Thieves. When enemy ADs come into last hit, you'll just be wanting to throw an E on them. At level 2, we'll be taking Q. This will enable you to fear targets that are coming in to engage, and also begin the T-posing fearing with the E. At level 3, we'll be able to take our W. This will help us push waves and regain a bit of lost HP. As discussed in the items section, once you've hit your first back, you should hopefully be able to pick up Boots 1 and your Dark Seal. This is an ideal moment to roam with your Predator Boots, ideally ganking mid lane or assisting your jungler in an invade. From there, it's just a matter of waiting until you get 6 to be able to really effectively gank with Crowstorm. Now, with the mid game, you should be level 6 by this point if you haven't been abused too hard, and should be using Crowstorm on cooldown or saving it for skirmishes over Rift Herald or Dragons. This is your time to get as many Ingenious Hunter stacks as you can to lower the cooldown of your incoming items and trinket effigy. Mid game is as easy as pressing tab to see which enemies have bounties and ganking them for the shutdowns. If you're struggling bot lane or your bot lane's being camped by the enemy jungler, save your ultis for the enemy bot lanes to shut down their ADC. But above all, you should be prioritizing saving your ulti for neutral objectives. Now in the late game, by level 16, the Crowstorm does incredible damage and can carry team fights on its own. You want to be making sure you're playing vision control as much as possible to stay unseen from enemies as much as you can. Track the enemy's support's movements and destroy their wards as soon as possible possible, abuse your low trinket cooldown to sweep as many areas as possible, and try to fight within confined spaces such as the jungle or river fights to ensure that enemies are bunched together when fighting. You can also use your team to bait enemies into thinking they have the upper hand whilst you're actually casting your ultis from over walls or unseen bushes. After knowing how some of your games should be tending to play out, let's dive into some tips and tricks for Fiddle. As discussed in the abilities section, Bountiful Harvest grants true vision to those who are tethered, so if enemies are about to run into a bush, you can tether them with W to keep them visible. Also, as previously mentioned, once Q has been leveled, all of Fiddlesticks' abilities can fear enemies as long as you're unseen or T-posing. Q can fear one target, or you should mainly try to fear targets using Crowstorm or E. This being said, if you quickly run into a bush and press W, it will fear enemies that are chasing closely behind. Try to abuse the T-posing E fears as much as you can during the early game by standing near the minion wave and fearing enemy ADCs that come into last hit. As also discussed in the passive section, the trinket effigy will run in a targeted direction, so keep this in mind when running away from enemies throughout the jungle. You'll be able to place the effigy in a bush that you're within and have it run in an opposite direction. You'll be able to use this as a sort of mind games to run in one direction whilst you have your effigy run in a different one. This can bait some enemies into using abilities on the effigy instead of yourself. Before level 6, your effigies do not apply the sweeper effect, so you'll be able to use these in lane and also T-pose yourself to have enemies guessing which one will be the real Fiddle. But if you're looking to use this, make sure the wave has crashed to their tower and you're not being spotted by wards or minions. Fiddle doesn't really have too many combos to discuss, but it is important which order you use your abilities to maximize your damage. Ideally, you're going to be wanting to fear enemies with any other ability than Q. This will make it so when you do use your Q on a target that's already previously been feared, it will deal the most damage it can. Before level 6, you're most likely going to achieve this through using Reap whilst unseen or T-posing. Then later, walking up to Q for short trades. With longer trades or all-ins, you'll be wanting to do the same, but running as close to the target champion model as possible to cast Bountiful Harvest, so they have the max distance to run to untether themselves. To chain Fiddlesticks' CCs, you'll be wanting to start off with a Crowstorm Fear, Q for the maximum damage, channel the W for as long as the fear duration lasts, and then use an E to silence the enemies when the fear is nearing an end. As shown in this clip, you can also extend the fear range whilst casting Crowstorm by spamming Reap on targets that are outside the ultimate range. As long as you're unseen, this will fear enemies outside the ulti range. In conclusion, Fiddlesticks is the king of vision denial. With a short effigy cooldown from the runes, this allows Fiddle to sweep much more regularly than Red Trinket. Fiddlesticks has incredible base damages, even better AP scalings, which makes him incredible picks for when your team has drafted fucking 4 AD champs in Champ Select, mate. Fiddlesticks is an extremely underrated support pick, and I hope you feel slightly different about him after watching this video. Alright fams, I've been xSprinkle. If you enjoy off-meta supports just as much as I do, feel free to subscribe down below. Hit the noti bell so you catch little Dinkle's fucking videos every time they come out. Drop a like if you fucking learned anything today. Comment your favourite off-meta support and I just might fucking try him out myself. Much love, ham. Happy Halloween and peace.